All right, guys, here are two example problems from your topic test. Again, extra credit opportunity. It all depends on how you read the question. Okay? It'll say this on question 1. It'll say, is the inverse a function? So let's look at an equation that it would give you. Okay? Here we go. X minus 2 squared, let's say, plus 3 is equal to f of x. And we want to find the inverse function. Okay? So here we go. The steps are y equals x minus 2. Inverse is, you know that you're supposed to switch the x, no worries. You'll switch the x and the y. Now solve for your new y piece by getting y alone. And when you do, that's your inverse function. Okay? Here we go. Subtract 3. Here we go. Big important step right here. On the notes for today, anytime I told you to initialize a radical, you have to do the plus or minus. So on the right side, you're just left with the radicand. On the left side, you have the plus or minus version of this. Then you're going to add 2 so that y is equal to the plus or minus square root of x minus 3 plus 2. You have to finish it off, and I'm looking for this on your quiz for next class, with an inverse of f of x notation. That's not f to the negative 1 power. This is the inverse of f of x, okay? And then you have this. Now listen. 2 things right now that you need to be aware of. Otherwise, it's very difficult to understand the questioning of the quizzes and the test. Number 1. If I asked you, is this a function? What would you say? No. Because it has that negative piece to it that would make it fail the vertical line test. Now listen. This thing that we just found, it's called an inverse relation. Yes, because an inverse relation can fail the vertical line test. Relations can fail the vertical line test all day. Functions cannot. You with me? So this is an inverse relation. And if I asked you, is the inverse a function, you would say no. On the ones that you're going to select, pick the one that's plus or minus, and over here in a semicolon, it will say no. There's your answer. Okay? Are we good? Do we understand that? Now, if I asked you, we know that this inverse function is not a function. But I have to show both. And if I told you, what would be the function? It would just be the positive piece, because it would fail the vertical line test. So think about it this way. This right here comes from the family of square root of x. It was shifted 3 to the right and 2 up. And if I did the positive piece, it's this one. But if I did the negative piece, it would be down here. And I can't draw that and it still be a function. You with me? So, as far as relation goes, this is our inverse relation. It's not a function because it can only have the positive piece to be a function. One more, and this should finish you off. So, going from a square to a square root, you have to do that plus or minus. But if you have something that looks like this, okay, so f of x is equal to square root of x plus 2 minus 1. Change the f of x to y. flip the x and the y. Solve for the new y. Square both sides. So I'm left with y plus 2. Uh-oh, here we go. X squared plus 2x plus 1, because you're multiplying, right? Now listen, there was a good mistake that I just heard was made. It's not a plus and minus when you square it. It's only the plus when you square it. But when you square root, then it's the plus and minus. And I think a good way to remember that is whenever you learn the quadratic formula, the square root has the plus and minus. Okay? Now finishing this off, you see what we're doing as far as all this goes? Now, you don't have to distribute when you're doing Pearson. You can keep it just as this, and then move that 2 over, and the function looks like this. Where the inverse function is x plus 1. Guys, is this a function? It is a function because the domain of a quadratic is all real numbers. And remember, what you should have learned was this. If you're given a quadratic, you have to domain restrict this, just half of it, so that when you draw the inverse function, it's going to be only that positive piece. Remember, we did these on the board. But if you are given first the square root piece, remember that already passes the horizontal line test. There aren't going to be any domain restrictions. Its inverse is just going to be that one right here. Go with me? But when you are doing it mathematically, this other part will appear, but it still passes the vertical line test. I know that's a lot. Watch the video if you need to. You should need to watch the video. Just to clarify that you're good to go, you might be able to log in right now. Don't waste this last 10 to 15 minutes. Work on it, at least get a good start.